So, hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to be talking to you and for you to take the time out of your crazy schedule. Would you
Thank
like
you
to,
so much. I'm happy to have this conversation with you, Anthony.
thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Tracy Z. I am a Bergen County Commissioner, Vice Chair of the Board of Commissioners, but also the liaison to the LGBTQ Advisory Committee.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. Um, so, what is your relationship to the LGBTQ community? Like,
We when I came on the board, one of the I brought to the conversation was the fact that we had a lot of different advisory boards that were charged with bringing the voices of varying communities to the table, but there was not one for the LGBTQ community. And so I researched what this looked like in other counties. We were the second in the state to form an LGBTQ advisory committee, and so since that point in time, I've been the liaison to that committee, kind of bringing voices together, but also figuring out the direction that we need to be going. One of the things that came to the committee at one of our first flag raisings was two of GSA members, advisors, were talking and said, "Oh, it would be such a great idea to have a more broader opportunity for us to exchange ideas." And then that was the impetus for us to form the GSA summit that we do every single year. We have done this for the past 3 years, where we bring over 200 students together from all the different high schools in the county to not only realize they're not alone, but also to share ideas about how they can better engage with their GSAs and what different GSAs are doing, and have it be a really empowering day for them to learn about each other, learn about themselves, and learn really how much more amplified together their voices can be.
awesome. And that's, this is another, and I don't want to jump ahead of anything, but this is another reason why I'm doing this is who's recording this information for the community of the people that took the lead to do stuff. So like you created this, and in another sense, this is sort of like a repository to Bergen County's history of the LGBT community. And I want to like recommend, or I want to give credits where credit's due and make sure that that is, where people can come and see this and understand. So I'm hoping this will grow and grow and grow and have a place. And, just want to say thank you for doing that, because without allies, without people like you doing this kind of work, we don't get change, right? So it's so
I
important.
think it's important, I do think it's important that everyone have a seat at the table, that everyone be able to vocalize and communicate and understand, um, you know, our diverse perspectives are what makes our county so special, and such a place where we all want to live and work and
Yeah,
be, and so, this was a natural step, and it was something that needed to happen. And, I'm very grateful for the teamwork we have on the advisory committee that has really brought to fruition some really great ideas.
it's awesome. Awesome. So my next question is sort of like a two-parter. So, and this is honestly, it's a question of like, I don't know the answer to this, and I think a lot of people don't know the answer to this. So I'm getting everyone's kind of perspective as to why it is, right? So first, why do you think there isn't an LGBT resource center? And when I say a resource center, is like a place where people can go to that will be able to connect them to other agencies that are doing the work, kind of a deal, whether that's a brick and mortar or whether that is an online resource. And what do you think are the barriers, if there's any barriers, you know, to having such a place exist?
So I think, listen, as I said before, we just formed the LGBTQ advisory committee back in 2015. I think that was an important first step. I think that this is an ongoing conversation. I think part of the reason it doesn't exist is because it hasn't been brought forward from the community as being something that is integral and important, and really hasn't taken shape yet. I think that we need more feedback from the community about what is needed and what is necessary. Bergen County is a unique place. Is a very much a bedroom community to New York City. There's so many services and things across the river that people go and utilize as well. And so, but we have a lot of young people, we have a lot of older people, we have families. So it's really, what does this center look like? What is it that is needed and necessary? What we've had some really great steps here in Bergen County. We had one of the first PFLAG chapters that ever existed I think even the Northeast, let alone in the state of New Jersey. We've had really active engagement, but I don't think there's ever been anyone said, we need this center and come forward with a strategic plan for what that needs to look like. Where this is housed, I think is important. Is it a nonprofit? Is it which nonprofit? How do all the different disparate stakeholders kind of coordinate to bring this thing to life? Things don't have, all of it is, time, money, energy, volunteer source, all of those pieces are necessary to put into a puzzle before you can come to really formulate what a center should be, what it should look like. It's like you need a roadmap, and nobody has put together that roadmap as of this point in time.
Actually, yeah, and thank you for saying that, because there's I think there's like a lot of disconnects. So being LGBT person and talking to other LGBT people within the community, and there's like people that are maybe living a rough life or something, and you ask them, so what are the services for Bergen County? And often it's like, we don't have any, which is not true.
Right.
We have stuff.
I
And
think that you're right, and that's kind of, Buddies has aspects of services that they provide. Newbridge is coming forward doing an aspect of this. We've had, our Department of Senior Services has been doing an aspect of LGBTQ outreach within its confines. Garden State Equality has a presence in doing their SAGES program and other pieces of this puzzle. But the problem really comes down to identification, understanding scope, understanding mission. What is the goal? What is and kind of laying out that roadmap on how you get there, how you bring people to I think that one of the challenges so many profit communities, and this is unique to the LGBTQ community by any stretch of the imagination, is there's so many people doing such great work, and everyone kind of likes their own little turf, right? So it's figuring out how you bring those voices together to unify behind something. And I think you need to understand strategic mission and how you go ahead and create that. What's the goal? And how are you supporting that need with data? It really does require, it can't just be an anecdotal conversation. Oh, this is something we should have, and maybe one of the first steps is putting together a resource guide or something of that through, or the advisory committee. I'm not sure, but I think that there needs to be an engaged conversation among stakeholders about a direction that this should go,
yeah,
and what the vision for it is.
yeah. And once again, thank you for that, because this is the point I was trying to make is, the perception from the bottom up is, yes, we need something put together, but no one knows the outline that you just gave us. We need to hear that outline, because the assumption is, why isn't it just there? Why don't we just have this? Why is it? And it's like,
Right.
from what I'm
But
gathering, is a real lack of apathy within the LGBT community. And that for various reasons.
you can't like go Field of Dreams, like if you build it, they will come. Doesn't happen. There's too many dollars, there's too many resources, and there's too much energy behind it. You have to kind of have the buy-in and put together that composite picture of what it should look like. It's like kind of that public policy 101 of doing an analysis of what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, what are the challenges, who are the stakeholders, and how do you bring all of that together to create whatever it is that needs creating, and I don't know if it's a center. I don't know if it's a brick and mortar center. I don't know if it's a virtual center. I don't know if it's just a guide. I don't know what that is. I think everyone needs more feedback before we can say this is the outcome. Like, usually we come to decisions, we do the research, we put together the puzzle, and then we see the image, rather than having an image and then putting together, like, we have to figure out all of the pieces that are at play here.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, that's what I'm trying to do, but from the bottom up. I'm trying to talk to as many different people and say, okay, what is it that what is your experience? What are your needs? so that way we can get a picture, because often the
That's
perception.
a more productive conversation than
Mhm,
what you started with is, why don't we have a center?
mhm,
You're making a conclusion at the beginning of it that that's what is the cure. I think figuring out what the challenges are and what you're trying to solve for may help
yeah,
strengthen that other ultimate outcome.
yeah. And so just a little pushback here. I mean, I am being a little bit biased. I really do believe we need a
Right.
center. The reason I believe that is for various reasons. We don't, as a LGBT person, we don't have a space. Do you know what I mean? A physical space where you can come and be safe. We don't have, other people from various communities. They have churches, they have this, they have that, but we don't have a physical space to go to. For that reason alone, I find it needed. But like you said, like a virtual thing, if you're coming in from another county or another state and you're moving here, don't know anyone, who do you reach out to find out what's available? I'm married, I have a daughter. How do I find a pediatrician? Or we're going to file taxes. Who do I tell? So it's like from the very basic level, I think it's
So
needed.
there's interesting that what you put forward are two different interesting challenges
Yeah.
because, and this is I think where we on the committee we had talked about doing some kind of resource guide at one point in time, but then we were really concerned about the private vendor space of this because you don't want to endorse something and then find out that that person is charged with felony embezzlement like you
Yeah.
don't want to put the good housekeeping seal of approval, so to speak, on in an endorsement of that by concluding it in a guide. I think maybe an interesting place to start would be kind of just a survey of the public and nonprofit spaces that are available rather than endorsing social workers, doctors, like those kinds of spaces, because I think that just gets a little bit more complicated as far as kind of you
And
know
and that's lovely, and in a perfect world I would love to do that. And this, I'm just telling you from my experience, and this has only been a few weeks in. A lot of people are still not willing to talk to someone like me about this, and maybe because I'm not an interviewer. I don't have those qualifications. I'm not a politician or anything, and so maybe the wording's wrong. I'll give you that. But I'm really having a struggle reaching out to people to ask them, could you tell me, like, what do you offer? How do you know that that's meeting the needs of the public? And it's like, these are genuine questions. These aren't coming up. I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but I can imagine how that could be. You understand what I'm saying? So I appreciate what you're saying. I just don't know how to do it. And this is part of what I'm doing, is trying to learn how to do what you're saying. How do I go to all these organizations and ask those questions? Because, this is what I want to do. This is why, I want to push for a physical center in Bergen County for people to go to, and feel a connection, and feel like, we're a part of the community by
So I
having.
think that maybe, um, you know, and I don't know 1,000% how to reach everybody and get
Yeah.
input and garner that in some kind of survey, where you really assess what the needs of the community are, because there's no, we're going to get our census data back soon, and we'll have a little bit of an, idea of individuals who identify in some ways, but not in all ways. And it's, so there's no like cohesive unit of how we reach out. And I think that that's one of the things, first of all, that needs to get strengthened. And that will involve outreach to so many of the nonprofits, and hospitals and what have you, who are working already to collaborate and build. And whether that's engaging, you know, I'm sorry to go to Buddies, but we work with them a lot, whether it's Buddies or Newbridge, or Valley has a outreach center for LGBTQ as well. It's understanding how we put together this conversation and survey and assess what are the needs of the community. And listen, and I've gone through this conversation in other hats. There was a Jewish community center in Washington Township that failed because there was not enough support for it in a brick and mortar structure, and they are now doing different programming elements, still keeping but that's what I'm saying. It's understanding what it is that you're trying to build and what the support will be and the needs will be for that entity, and
Mhm.
where is it housed and how is it staffed, and what are the offerings? What's the goals? And I think that once you clarify your mission and clarify, you know, your target, I obviously would have to reach out to seniors and to youth and to everyone in between. And how
Yeah.
do you structure that? And
Yeah.
who is going to create that programming? And who's going to, how does this work? How
Yeah.
does this partnership develop?
Yeah.
And I think that, I think the first spot is always identification, figuring out who your target audience is, doing some kind of survey and, going from there. So it's understanding your needs. And it's sometimes hard to look on what your personal needs are and see what the community as a whole's needs are,
Yeah.
if
And
that makes sense.
yeah, it does. And I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to explain that, because this is everything you're saying is accurate. Everything is what we need to do moving forward. And it's great.
And by the way, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think having something unifying is important. I think having, whether, I just don't know if that's a space or if that's a program
Absolutely.
component or a nonprofit or something of that sort. I just don't understand what it needs to look like exactly.
Yeah. And and once again, maybe I'm wording it wrong, or maybe it's the kind of thing, but it's very, I'm coming from the same space as you. And what I would like this to be is, what is the need from the people, and
Mhm.
what is the need, what are the services that are provided, and what is left, because we always can
But
improve.
that's where I think an assessment of the organizations that exist and what they're doing
Yeah.
is an important first step,
So
because you don't need to recreate wheels if
yeah.
it's already existing in some form and it's just needs more publicity. Or I don't, the answer is I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of information to collect so that you can move forward in a way that secures buy-in and success and partnership and collaboration to truly meet the needs of the community.
Yeah. So let me ask you, how do you get in that assess of the different organizations? Like, how, I mean, from a person like such as myself, just a regular citizen, how do I go about
Well, you're not
doing
just a
this?
regular citizen. You
I'm
sit on
sorry?
the advisory committee. You
Yeah.
have context there for a lot of organizations,
Yeah.
because of the folks who also sit on this advisory committee. And you can
Yeah.
start there, start with Glisten, start with PFLAG, start with, the Trevor Project, start with the New Bridge, start with Buddies,
Yeah.
assess what services that they're all offering, and then kind of go from there.
Right. So having said that, I
Mhm.
don't have the ability to reach out to some of those people. And I agree, I do have a lot more privilege. So, but for the intent of this conversation, I'm asking, like, how does a regular person go out and ask different agencies to get that kind of,
A
to get
regular
that?
person writes a letter and they reach out and they ask the question. I mean, there's no special access privileges that anyone has. I mean,
Yeah.
that I think that all of these organizations are excited to share what they're doing. They're proud of what they're accomplishing every single day, and they want to increase their profile too. So this is not like in a lockbox somewhere. This is usually on their website. This is not a rocket science as far as how you find this information. You start by doing a web search on what's available online, and then you reach out to the executive director of the organization and you ask more questions if there's something that's not clear, and you start from there.
Yeah.
It's
So,
putting together building blocks. That's what it is.
you're talking about actual services. What I'm really at the heart of is, like, who's going to have all that information, and where is it going to live, so I can give out that information to other people. So, if I go out to, let's say, Buddies, they're not going to know about, like, domestic violence and resources like that per se. And if I go
Well,
out
they
to,
might though. You don't know. I believe they do
no,
actually.
but you go to Newbridge, and they're not going to have, a place for, like, just to hang out and have, where people are going to hang out and just do social events and stuff like that. Like, each of them have a
But there
piece of,
are groups that do social events, like Garden State Equality does a lot of those like sage
yeah.
events. So
I,
my point is like, I think the first part and the first challenge is assessing your landscape,
yeah,
seeing
I mean,
what exists, and
that's,
then figure out from there how you bring it together, or if it needs bringing together, or under what umbrella it should be brought together.
well, it should be brought together, because if someone needs to know, what are the different resources?
No,
So they should have that central.
what I'm saying, Anthony, is you're asserting in your thesis here that
Yeah.
it should be brought together in a brick and mortar center where people can also hang out. You've said that
Yeah.
in this interview.
That's
And
my belief.
and that's because that's what you believe is the ultimate solution.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not. It very well could be. It could be a wonderful asset. I don't know. I'm just saying I think there needs to be some baby steps before you kind of could run. And I think that the information collection and assessment and building a consensus that this is what is needed in the community, and then bring and those voices could come to forward, and there could be a meeting of all these different nonprofits that are already engaged in this sphere and see if there is a desire for them to collaborate to build something of this sort.
Right. So there's, like you said, there was two separate parts to it. I believe that there should be a physical space, but the other
And maybe there should be, and maybe that's something of value. I don't know. I don't know what dollars are available and what the bandwidth exists as far as funding a physical space, and if that's
so
something, or if it's something that should exist under the umbrella of these other already existing physical spaces.
right. So the other part of that is where we have all the information of all the different agencies that are doing all this work, someone that has that information. So if someone's coming into the county and doesn't know anything about this county, says, hey, where do I find this? Hey, where do I find that? It's increasing very difficult.
And Anthony, if that's something that you want to create as a piece and a project of a subcommittee of the advisory group, I think more power to it. I think that could definitely, the formulation of a resource guide, as long as it is about those kinds of services and not doctors, accountants, that's where I get into a problem, just because I think that the county shouldn't endorse any private practitioners without a full, thorough assessment of, I think we could run into problems there.
Yeah,
but I think that if you wanted to put together, I would be thrilled for that to be a subcommittee of something that is happening in the advisory committee, to put together the digital resource guide, to put that together. Where that evolves into, just like I didn't know when we started this advisory committee what it would evolve into, just like I didn't know what would happen when we started this, LGBTQ youth summit. It takes time, and more importantly, it takes consensus building. And there's as I said, Bergen County is unique. We have so many amazing resources right across the river in New York City. We are a suburban community. What does this look like here versus what it would look like in New York City? I think that's what the input that would be really valuable from the community. And I look forward to, to seeing the steps you're going to put in to continue to gather that information.
Yeah, but there's something to be said that, like you said, you don't endorse having, accountants and other agencies, but that also may be a need for someone in.
But that's not something that I would endorse from the advisory committee.
That's why
that's not the role for government to be involved in.
This is why.
But that's what I said to you at the outset. I don't know where you're proposing something that I don't know if where it should be housed. It should be, that's why I think that building your consensus among the nonprofit partners that already exist in the space is super important. I think that that's how you're going to have the success in moving this from, an idea to something that is, can come to conception.
And that's an important piece of it. But the part that I'm trying to get to is, we need a place, whether it's virtual or not, where people can get access to be connected to all the different resources, whether it's a private business or not. So
I don't agree with that. I mean, I don't agree with my role in being part of that.
Yeah,
I'm saying if the advisory committee wants to put together a compendium of nonprofit partners who are providing services to the LGBTQ community, I think that's great.
Yeah.
And that I would endorse entirely. I think that would be a really good starting step for where this needs to go, and how it ends up taking life from there, and what you ultimately build is really a result of the work. And it's a lot of work. I mean, you asked what the biggest impediment to this center existing. It's the legwork that's going to be involved to build the relationships and to kind of get this fundraise and put together and the blueprint for what this should look like.
So I appreciate that, but you know, this is just a hypothetical conversation and just
I
raising
understand, but
awareness.
I don't go in hypotheticals, Anthony. I'm like one of those people who like I want to strategize on how to get from the start to
And
finish,
that's
and
great.
that's how my brain works
I,
because it's if you have a problem, if there's something that's absent and it needs remedying,
yeah.
great. Let's make the case for that.
So the
Let's
problem
put together the pieces for
yeah,
it. I'm not one of those like let's just curse the darkness that something doesn't happen. Like you have to figure out how to make it happen.
yes,
And I think that
absolutely.
the what is behind that, what's the biggest impediment is somebody grabbing the reins and putting in the work and making the case for this.
All right, so to make this clear, this project is to raise awareness. I don't have an agenda to create an LGBT center. I believe there should be an LGBT center, but this is not what the point of this is. The point of this is to talk to many different people, hear their needs, and to show, demonstrate the different complexities of everyone. So I've spoken to women who are in a same-sex relationship, and they're of a generation where they're not married, and they need to find accountants, and they need to make sure that this person that they're talking to is going to understand that they share all their stuff together, and they're, for all intents and purposes, they're married, but they don't have that certificate. So where do I go to find that? It would be amazing if I had some resource to go to get that. And so what I'm
So
saying is
it's
just
interesting
to
to me
raise
that that's
awareness.
what you keep coming back to as being a value.
Mhm.
I don't see, I mean, listen, I'm couldn't be a louder ally, and I wear that my allyship with a lot of pride. I think that um, what is my assessment of what's lacking may be different than what your assessment of what's lacking is concerned.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that I want to go to a center and have them tell me what accountant to go to. I want to figure that out and what feels comfortable for myself. So I don't turn to any identity place for my services in that regard. I
Yeah.
think that are I think there is tremendous value in knowing what services that are unique and special to the LGBT community's needs that are out there. But and I think this is what comes down to back to my initial point is I think you need to assess what the community wants. I don't think that I don't maybe
That's
the
what I'm
community
doing.
does want no, that's not what you're doing because you're coming to this with a preconception of what the outcome should look like.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying is I think that maybe that's a great outcome. I'm not poo-pooing that as a possibility. I'm just saying when you come to it with an idea and a prescription, you're not open to the whole panoply of possibility and option. And I think that to get more information and to do that work and build that consensus of what it should look like will ultimately make that project something that can be successfully accomplished.
Okay. Well, I mean, to be fair, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying you're wrong. That's
No,
not what I'm saying. I'm
I
just saying, listen, I come to, as I said to you, I come to this with this public policy mindset, and I'm sorry that that's how I approach my problem solving. But like, this is the way I look, the lens that I look at it through. I see a problem, I want to figure out how to solve it,
yeah.
but that doesn't mean come up with a solution and then make the case for that solution.
All right. So
I think the first spot is identifying the problem and then seeing what the gaps in services are and seeing, I mean, I don't know exactly. And because Newbridge, the center that was there was announced like in the heart of just at the beginning of COVID. And I don't even have a full breadth of what their offerings are. If
yeah.
if what they're offering is, meets a need that is lacking. And I just think that how we put together the puzzle could be very interesting. That's all.
Newbridge is not a resource center. I'm not looking at that. And you're coming from like a top-down kind of approach. I'm coming from more of a bottom-up because some of the people.
No, I'm not coming from a top-down approach. I'm coming from let's get the information and figure out what the grassroots wants. Figure out what community
So how do you get the information for people who are crystal meth users and no one's looking into that? Or how do you get the information from lesbian couples that have been feeling like they've been ostracized and they don't really engage in anything, and you don't hear their voices, or the pansexual community, or the demisexual community, or the transgender community, which is a literal desert here. How do you get their
Yeah.
voices when they are at this point? They are just squashed. They don't want to be engaged with anything. They don't see
But
it.
that's, but
You know,
that
so
what you
this
touch
is
on
why
exactly
I'm
part of the
talking.
problem though, Anthony, is you can't just say like field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. If they're feeling ostracized, if they're feeling disconnected, if they're parts of this community, they may not seek it there either. And
Yeah,
so it's one of those things where I don't have all the answers and I'm not going to pretend to. I just think that we need to do a better job of trying to tap into those voices, trying to tap into those communities and see what the consensus need
yeah.
is.
And
And
that's
whatever that
what I'm
is,
trying to
I'm
do.
happy to be part of that conversation
Yeah,
and will always, try and lend my problem solving mindset to how we work towards an ultimate outcome that best meets the needs of the community, and whatever that is, whether that's virtual, whether it's brick and mortar, whether that's affiliated with, I really do think that compendiums of nonprofits are super powerful, and they already have bases of service points that they can, you could do a survey through Trevor Project, through of Bergen County residents, and try and get input and craft a survey that is open-ended rather than coming to a conclusion first and asking what the needs are and then figuring it out from there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think sometimes when you force a concept, you're then disappointed that that's not that's not where you end. I think sometimes
yeah.
if you build the blocks, you'll get there in a more successful way,
Yeah.
if that makes
And
sense.
I appreciate that. And I agree with you on most of what you're saying. But like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm not
I don't, I mean,
a journalist.
I don't consider myself one either, by the way.
But and it's like, but to me, I don't think that would reach as many people in the community your way. And
How does a community, if you build a center that no one's going to come to, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you build a center, there's no guarantee that the disparate, listen, there is a lot that brings the community together and there's a lot that's unifying, but just based upon generational needs, just based upon the different needs of the different subsets in the community, you may or may not be offering what the community wants. And that's what I'm saying is I think your first step
yeah,
should be to figure out what the community wants.
and that's what I'm trying to do by listening to the actual people
Yeah,
as
I think that's good. I think that's an
and
important step.
giving them an avenue, a venue to talk to us. So I'm reaching out to the kids that are in college, to the people that are working with them. I'm reaching out to people that are just very, feel you know,
Franchised. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that's
and
a
it,
great place to start, Anthony. I think that's terrific and really important as
yeah,
we formulate what this should be. But I wouldn't ignore the organizations that are already
but
in this
this is
space.
yeah, but this is not. I'm just to make it clear, I'm not trying to ignore organizations. I'm just trying to say we need someone that's going to connect to those organizations that are doing the work. So what good is it if no one knows that New Bridge is doing that work, or if Buddies is doing that work, or if the Trevor Project is doing that work? What a resource center is the person that will have that information and disseminate to the people that need it. And it's important and it's needed. We need something like that when you come in here. I don't need to ask anyone that. It's a basic safety net. But you can disagree with me and we can go
I'm
on.
not disagreeing with you.
I'm just saying we need to have
I
something.
want you to understand, Anthony, I am not disagreeing with
Yeah.
you about what is ultimately needed. I'm disagreeing with you about process. I'm disagreeing about how one goes about creating a strategic plan and building momentum
And
towards coming to an outcome.
and
And
I'm
my
here to
point to
learn.
you is I believe that you should be sitting down with some of these organizations that are already in this space to assess with them if they think this is either something they could do to expand their offerings or envelop and then more broadly broadcast what that is, or if that's something they want to come together with others to work towards. But see if they're willing also to send a survey to those who are already using their services so you can get a more broader perspective than just the ones that you're coming into contact with. I think that all voices are important. And when we're looking at a county like Bergen, which is almost 1 million people and 70 different municipalities in so many different subsets of communities to begin with, that kind of overarching outreach is always the most impactful way of starting a process, I believe.
And that's awesome, and I would love to do that, and that's something that might be the next step. And so like I said, this is just me reaching out to people and trying to have this conversation to raise awareness where I think there's a need, right? And so I'm just trying to build out that. And if it comes to that, that's awesome. That would be amazing because I want to do exactly what you're talking about. I just don't know how to get there, and I'm trying to get there. So I'm not making assumptions that these agencies are discounting them or anything. I think that's very needed. That's the whole point of this. Is there are people doing the work. There are people that are actually
Yeah,
doing these
there's a
services,
lot of people who've been on the ground doing, building in,
and
really amazing programs that have done tremendous amounts of outreach. And I think some of the problems sometimes for them too is, yeah, you're right. The people sometimes who need the services the most don't know where to look for them. And that's in every community, in everything, whether it's a small business mentoring program that exists in Bergen County
yeah,
or a domestic violence, like every single, like I'm frustrated as a commissioner is that the county does so much and has so many programs available that most don't know about. And that may be true for so many of these organizations as well. And what may actually be necessary is a platform to amplify what already exists rather than building something new.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm guessing as you are. And I'm one who likes to fill in guesses with data.
Yeah, and I too. So part of this project that I'm doing is, and tell me if this is crazy or not, because like I said, this is just me trying to create this, and I really wanted your input on this because I want to get this done. That's my agenda. So part of what I want to do with this project is to take real numbers that we know that are generally from Human Rights Campaign. They generate data and stuff like that and apply it to Bergen County so we can have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. So like they say 20 to 40% from the Human Rights Campaign of homeless youth is LGBT. So how many homeless youth do we have, and how much is that 20 to 40%? So that's part of this project that I want to do. 50% of like suicides, teen suicides, I think it's about 50% is because of LGBT. So how many suicides do we have going on in Bergen County and do that? I don't know how to get there to do that, but and I would love if you have any insight into doing that, to
Well,
have
we
that a
can
part
talk
of it.
off camera about
Okay.
some of the nuts and bolts and organizations that you can turn to try and get and, working with, to get
Yeah,
some of that information. But yeah, I mean, I hear you and I understand that. Listen, that's one of the reasons why we formed this LGBTQ advisory committee back in 2015 in the first place,
yeah,
was to, and in the years that we've had briefings from the head of the Human Services Department about youth homelessness, and we've had, and
yeah.
obviously in the last 2 years since a year and a half since COVID, we've not had those kinds of meetings. But you know, if that is a focus and that is someplace that you want to go, I'm happy to help you figure out how to get the information you need.
So one last question, because I know you're very valuable your time. So I'm sorry to like keep you so long. So what do you think is my first step? What should I be doing? What direction should I be going so I can?
So I think I've laid that out pretty clearly. I think that you should be reaching out to the organizations that are already providing services to the LGBT community, putting together a compendium of what those services are and having them reach out to their membership and their clients to determine really what the gaps of service are so that you could figure out what direction this really
Yeah.
should go in and what this should look like.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks.
And I look forward to watching the journey and to being part of it. And as as you hit walls, to help you strategize to how we figure out how we get that information or bring others to the table. But I think that we have some really amazing nonprofit partners here in our county and some folks who are really dedicated to serving the LGBT community. And making sure we get everybody to be part of this conversation and figure out what the right goal is,
Mhm.
then we can all be behind that goal.
And I'm going to hold you to it because I really want to talk to these organizations and get them on. And I mean, this is a project, and I'm trying to be as transparent. I'm not trying to call anyone.
Listen, this is a project that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of information gathering and a lot of consensus building and a lot of, assessment of strategy and how you move forward, because, you know, every everyone wants, I think there are so many people who do want to do the right thing and who
Yeah,
are wanting to serve the community in the most comprehensive way possible. And
yeah,
it's just, what does that mean in Bergen County, in our suburbs, with our residents, in the so many different age demographics and different sub communities, and
yeah.
and go from there.
I'm up to the challenge. I want to do this work, and I think it needs to be done. Whether I can do it or not, it needs to be done. So, hopefully I can do it, and let's do this work. And I'm going to hold you to it because I want to really talk to all these different
I
agencies.
look forward to having the conversations with you offline.
All right. So, can I ask you, do you feel comfortable with everything that was discussed there? And
I think so. I
yeah.
I
And
think we've had a very frank conversation. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. Listen. And by the way, I don't want you to take my like pushback sometimes as not commitment. I think
yeah.
that it's at that bottom line. Um, I want us to do the right thing for the right reasons, and then back that up with, a plan. And I look forward to the development of that strategic plan coming organically from the community and coming from a place of knowledge rather than just kind of guesswork.
And I would rather have hear your advice than just about anyone else because I want to get it done. I want to do that work. And if and I don't mind people pushing back. you know. So,
Listen, I want the best outcome, right? Like I want,
exactly.
I think that the voices need to be heard. I think that we need to make sure that our communities know what's out there,
Yeah.
and look forward to the process.
So also wanted to say, this is being recorded and I plan to make it public at some point on a web page. And at any given time, if you feel uncomfortable with it for any reason or no reason, I'll take it off. Just allow me time to do so. You'll have access to the web page so you can see it as it's growing, and you can have, I'll listen to your input and saying, hey, I don't like the way that's looking or something. Tell me so we can work together to make it, because ultimately,
I appreciate that.
and so if you will consent, that's
Yeah.
just, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I look forward to listening to this in the entirety rather than, when it's just our off the cuff conversation too. But
Yeah.
yeah, like,
So,
absolutely.
so I'm gonna end the video. So say bye to everyone. Thank you.
Bye.